Hey everybody, I want to talk to you today about my 5 reasons why you should be turning rotors in your shop. The first reason, and this is where a lot of mechanics, um, they may be great technicians, but they don't know about the bookkeeping side of running a business. The labor's not taxed. The parts are taxed. The more parts you sell, the more your tax liability is going to be. Simple as that. And you got to do all the paperwork and all that stuff that goes along with it. Which, the more that the ticket that ends up in the parts column, the more paperwork that goes along with it, basically. So by moving, if you look at your yearly totals, if you move a big pile of money that rolled through your shop out of the part sales column and into the labor column, your tax situation is going to look a whole lot better. So for tax purposes, this is a great machine. If you think you're paying too much taxes in your car business, that's a good place to look right there. The second thing, and this is like really important, this also goes to the bookkeeping side of running a business. Hoist time has a price. You want cars on and off the hoist in a timely fashion as a standard procedure. You don't want to be burning up hoist time. There's a certain vehicle that's pretty popular that if you want to do the head gaskets on it, you're better off to take off the cab and repair the motor with the cab removed from the truck. This job is a big time killer for hoist time. It just eats up weeks of hoist time while you're waiting for parts and stuff. With brake jobs, it's the same story. You're putting a car on the hoist. You would really like to have all the parts to finish that car when it went on the hoist. You'd like to have them at your shop already. If you're lifting up the car and then you're ordering the parts, now you've just added a bunch of wasted hoist time into that job. This adds up over the course of the year. So as a general rule, the best shops, the guys who are running the cleanest shops, they got habits of having the brakes and everything they need to finish the brake job in the shop when the car went on the hoist. Same thing with the tune-up. You wouldn't want to be making 3 or 4 trips to the parts store for a tune-up on a car. You'd like to have all that stuff ready in the shop when you put the car on the hoist. So this machine helps manage hoist time tremendously, and it adds up a lot over the course of a year, let alone 20 years or 30 years that you're going to be in business. These machines won't just pay for themselves. If you're using it properly, using the 25% rule, it should pay for itself within a couple of years, tops. And that would be in a low volume shop. In a high volume shop, you could pay for it the first year. It really can save you a gigantic pile of money through saving hoist time and just making your turnover rate considerably higher for your shop. Unless you happen to be a shop that has extra hoist, which nobody has too many hoists. This baby is all about saving hoist time. That's its second best feature. Then there's the other part. The third thing is you can't compete on price with somebody who's turning rotors and drums normally. When you're bidding a price on every brake job that includes a set of rotors, and the other guy is bidding a price on a brake job and he's only charging 25% the value of the rotors, he just beats you by a considerable margin, and you have to compete on price. Unless you're the only game in town, you have to compete on price, and you can't if you're not willing to turn any rotors at all, then you kind of are obligated to replace rotors to do a nice brake job. Maybe their rotors are really nice and you could get away with not turning the brake rotors once or twice, but eventually you're going to have to. You should have been doing it the whole time. You should either machine them or replace them. Take your pick. If you use the 25% rule, you're not going to waste your time turning rotors that aren't worth turning. If the rotors are only $60 for 2 rotors, like the rear rotors, the rear non-vented rotors you see on most of the cars today, they're not really worth turning. Now, if you look at other rotors that are $400 or $1,000 or $2,000, the most expensive I've seen so far are over $2,000 for 2 front rotors. Okay, 25% of that is a sizable chunk of change. And that's going to make a big difference if somebody's shopping around for a price. If you're pricing the job with new rotors rather than turning them, you can't compete with the guy who is willing to turn them, especially if he's properly equipped to turn them fast. There's no comparison. The fourth aspect is the parts people. The parts people are the bane of our existence. They burn up our hoist time, our shop time, and our turnover rate in any shop. And it doesn't matter if it's a dealership or a little hole-in-the-wall shop out in the middle of the boonies. The parts guys have a habit. There's 3 things you know about the parts guys. They always suck. They're always stupid, and they're always late. 3 things that would get you fired in any other portion of the automotive business. If anybody else in my shop had those, if those were the main qualities of anybody else in my shop, they'd be fired. Unfortunately, we got to deal with them. Well, one of the ways that you can keep them from pulling your pants down on a regular basis is to turn the rotors when you can. The whole story that it's better to replace the rotors, I know where that story comes from. That's the story that the parts people have been telling everybody for 30 years now. And the old timers, when I started in the business, the old timers used to laugh every time they heard that. And they would all tell me the same thing. They'd all be laughing about it and going, obviously, they've done their bookkeeping, but when I did mine, it came out better turning the rotors. If you want to run your business properly, you got to look at the bookkeeping side of the business. The parts people are one of your biggest headaches as far as making a consistent, sizable profit. If you're feeding that guy more than you're feeding yourself, you're doing something wrong. Then there's the other aspect. The 5th most important reason is parts availability. Okay, if you're doing rotors on every single car, you will find that rotors availability is spotty at best. I'm in Los Angeles. This is a huge market. There's hundreds. There's so much infrastructure to support automotive parts. It's ridiculous. It's a giant city and everybody drives. Even so, even with popular cars, you might have to wait until the next day to get a set of rotors, or they might deliver you the wrong rotors, or they might not exist. They might be on back order. You really can't have your cars sitting on a hoist. You find out the day after you ordered the parts that they won't be available for 2 weeks. Now you have to put the car back together and push it off the hoist and wait. And now your turnover time to get that car back out of your shop is entirely dependent on the parts people. Unless you have a shop with a huge overabundance of spare parking, you don't want to have 20 cars sitting around waiting for parts. Added up over the course of the year, the amount of extra days that cars will spend in the shop is a big problem for any shop that has a small limited parking. This machine can help with that in a big way, in a profitable way, by getting the car in and out of your shop without a huge delay because of the parts guy. Because we can almost always get brake pads for anything. There's plenty of those around. We can get brake shoes for almost anything. Wheel cylinders, master cylinders, we can get those. The drums and rotors, yeah, those are the ones that get everybody in trouble. That's where a lot of the parts availability and logistical issues for a major city don't really, it didn't scale up all that good. From a small town, they have problems because they don't have the scale of a big city. Well, I'm in a big city, and that problem didn't scale away. It's still there in the big city. When the brake jobs come in bunches, there might be a delay of 2 or 3 days to get a rotor. It happens even in big cities. So parts availability there's not really much else you can do other than turning rotors when you can and reducing the amount of times that you're stuck behind the parts availability curve. Anyway, those are my 5 main reasons. There's a bunch of other reasons why I like having a brake lathe in the shop. There's a lot of stuff you could do with this thing that's pretty cool besides just brakes, but that's a whole other story. It's a great machine to have. It'll put money in your pocket. It'll clean up your whole business as far as the accounting goes. It'll help you with hoist time. It'll help you with turnover rate. It's worth having. Personally, if I was going to pick, I'd pick an older Amco machine that's been properly restored, because I restore them pretty nice, and I haven't seen anything that's as nice as the machines that I'm building. But a new Amco is not bad. New machines will need to be tuned up once or twice before they really start behaving nicely. This is why I like the older seasoned machines. A good tune-up on an old seasoned machine, and them things will cut really nicely because the machine's seasoned and it's happy being what it is. It just needs to be lubricated and everything, and they will work even better than the new machines. I've seen the new machines, I've worked with the new machines, I've fixed the new machines. I'm not that impressed. I'm much more impressed with a high quality restored brake lathe. Boy howdy, these things kick butt. Anyway, thanks for your time. Feel free to comment in the section.